Another hockey season is around the corner, and that means Bob is back.
Toronto proud to announce Austin Matthews.
Last season, it was all about the battle for Austin Matthews.
Patrick with the puck shot.
This year, all eyes are on Brandon's superstar center, Nolan Patrick. It's a family affair as Patrick and Callan Foote attempt to follow in the footsteps of their NHL fathers. Bob McKenzie breaks down his list of up-and-coming NHL superstars on the preseason draft ranking show next. A name you'll be hearing all year long in draft talk, Nolan Patrick of the Brandon Wheat Kings, back practicing, coming off sports hernia surgery in the summer, expected to play in his team's opener on Friday, and expected to have a massive draft year. As we say hello, Canada, James Duthie, the man himself, Bob McKenzie, Craig Button will also be by. Welcome to the official start of the countdown to see who goes #1 next June in Chicago, otherwise known as Bob McKenzie's preseason draft ranking special. We have been so spoiled the last few years with some unreal talents going first overall. In fact, the #1 commercial for what it means to get the first overall pick has probably been North America at the World Cup.
McKinnon's all alone. He shoots. He scores.
How about that set of hands? Up and under the bar. Perfectly placed.
McDavid gets the puck. He's trying to get away. Gets himself loose. Matthews in front. He scores. Austin Matthews' first big goal in his new home from Connor McDavid. There's a hot shot from Riley. Matthews scores. Connor McDavid got it started. Big goal for Austin Matthews.
M&M and M, McKinnon, McDavid, Matthews, magic. So now that we've got you all fired up about the potential of a #1, we should probably temper the expectations a little bit. There are no McDavids, Matthews, no generational players in this draft. But there is a consensus #1. In fact, a unanimous #1, according to Bob's scouts. He's a player with significant NHL genes. Nolan Patrick of the Brandon Wheat Kings.
He's got real good vision, very good hockey sense.
Patrick knocks it in. Patrick with the puck shot. Goal!
Patrick slams, shot, scores. Here's Patrick, shoots and scores. Nolan Patrick, bang, bang.
Nolan Patrick has a chance to be a very special player.
So Nolan Patrick is your #1, Bob, and it wasn't close at all.
Not close at all, unanimous. 10 out of 10 scouts surveyed by TSN has them a clear #1 in this year's draft class. In a draft year, really, after #1, where it's a bit of a hodgepodge all over the place, not necessarily identifiable names right behind him. He's a big center, 6'3" almost, put up huge numbers last year, 40-plus goals, 100-plus points in leading Brandon to the WHL championship. He was the playoff MVP, so he's coming off an absolutely stellar year. Terrific bloodlines. His dad, Steve Patrick, played in the NHL, and of course, so did his uncle, James Patrick, a terrific defenseman. Now, he's not a dynamic skater. He doesn't have quite the wow factor of Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel, or Austin Matthews. We've been a little spoiled on that front. And scouts don't discount the possibility that he could be a #1 center in the National Hockey League. But a lot of the scouts I talk to say he projects more as a consensus second-line center as opposed to a first-line center. Worth noting, too, he was 4 days away from being eligible for last year's draft. If you were slotting him in that draft last year, he would not have knocked out any of the top 4 guys. And the scouts I talked to said he was probably anywhere between 5 and 10 in last year's rankings.
So that was one case where that birthday probably helped him to be #1, at least favored to be, to start the season. And as Bob said, no wow factor maybe, but really impressive resume already. Rookie of the Year 2015 in the WHL. They won in the playoffs, Brandon, in 2016, also won the playoff scoring title and was named playoff MVP for the Wheat Kings. TSN's head scout is, of course, Craig Button. You first saw Nolan back in November of 2013. What do you remember about that first game?
Well, it was the Western Canada Challenge Cup, which is a provincial best-on-best. And when you first watched Nolan, the thing that really struck me was the ease to his game. He was smart. He was confident. He wasn't a fast skater, but he was quick enough, and he was really, really excellent at making others around him better. It was very, very impressive to see a player at that time who had just turned 15 years of age.
You heard Bob say what the scouts had to say, that potentially he's a number 1 center, but he could be a number 3 center. What do you think about his potential?
Well, I think he's a number 1 franchise center. And I think with the scouts, a big part of it is there's not a wow. So now they think because there's not a wow, he's not good. I know this about Nolan Patrick. He dominated as a rookie. He absolutely dominated last year for the Western Hockey League champion Brandon Wheat Kings. And the biggest thing about Nolan Patrick, franchise centers make everybody around them better and the team better. That's exactly what Nolan Patrick does. Yeah, he might not pull you out of your seat. You want to build your team with a foundational center, that's what he is.
We will talk to Nolan Patrick momentarily, but first let's get to the remainder of Bob's top 5. Bobby.
It's going to be very competitive behind Nolan Patrick in this draft, and not easy to identify that talent. But let's start with number 2. That would be Timothy Liljegren. The Swedish defenseman is the undisputed top defenseman in this draft. And at this point, it's not even close. He is something of a one-dimensional offensive defenseman, but he looks to be an elite skater, both in terms of speed and agility. He has the ability to run a power play. Now, no one's suggesting he's the next Erik Karlsson, not by any means, but he certainly has some of those same offensive qualities. He was the only prospect other than Patrick who got 10 votes from the 10 scouts as a top 10 pick. Number 3, Klim Kostin. This Russian winger is big, strong, and aggressive. He can score and make plays. He doesn't have blinding speed, but he's a strong, powerful skater who can play both the power and skill game, though there tends to be an erratic quality to his play. Some scouts say he has similar traits to big Russian winger Valery Nichushkin. Number 4, Maxime Comtois. The Victoriaville left winger is getting lots of the same comparisons to last year's top Quebec League prospect Pierre-Luc Dubois, who went 3rd overall to Columbus. Bearing in mind last year's draft is considered a clear notch above this year's draft, Comtois has very good size, strength, is a good skater, and has an excellent shot, which allows him to play both the power game and have that scoring touch. He had a team-leading 4 goals for Team Canada at the Ivan Halinka tournament this summer. Number 5, L.A. Tolvanen. The Finnish winger is a pure sniper with an NHL shot and an NHL release. He's starting his second season with Sioux City of the USHL, and he's committed to go to Boston College for next season. At a shade under 6 feet, he isn't huge, but he is strong enough to get where he needs to go in order to score goals. He was excellent as an underage at the World Under-18 Championships last April in Grand Forks, and he was a dominant presence at the Under-20 World Junior Preview Showcase in Plymouth this summer. This kid has considerable wow factor.
All right, there is your top 5. Patrick, 41 goals, 102 points last season for Brandon. Liljegren scored in the Swedish Hockey League with men as a 16-year-old last season, led Sweden in scoring at the 2016 Halinka tournament. Comtois, as Bob mentioned, 4 goals for Canada at that Halinka. That represented 1/3 of Canada's total 12 goals at the tournament. All right, still ahead. You've heard about him. He's the preseason consensus number 1. We asked Nolan Patrick what it would mean to be Manitoba's first ever NHL top pick, and following in his father's footsteps.
Score! It's Adam Foote!
Quick shot to the blue line from Cal Foote.
Where would Cal Foote come in on Bob's rankings? It's a place to stand and a place to grow on Terry, Airy, oh. Anybody under 30 has no idea what I'm talking about. That was our theme song, and that's the theme of drafts. Ontario has 19 number 1 overalls in the draft, way more than anybody else. In fact, add everybody else together, and you don't get 19. Manitoba, still waiting for number 1. Nolan Patrick, hoping to be that. Nolan Patrick wants to be the first ever from Manitoba. He's our number 1 right now. The draft is almost 9 months away to the day. Have you let yourself think about the possibility of going number 1 overall?
Not too much. Obviously, you see it on the rankings there, but there's a lot of hockey to be played before that, and my main focus right now is kind of getting healthy and get the season going. So.
You turned 18 on Monday, so belated happy birthday. Besides getting a golf ride with the goalies to the ice, what was special about turning 18?
Not too much. It was just another day at the rink there. I guess I got a little special treatment taking the golf cart to the rink there, so that was nice.
You had sports hernia surgery back in July. Do you anticipate being ready for the Wheat Kings season opener, which is Friday in Moose Jaw?
Yeah, that's my main goal, is to be ready to play at the start of the season there. But you know, if the day comes and I'm not mentally or physically ready, I'm not gonna force myself in anything. It's a long season, so you know that's obviously my goal. But if it's not there, it's not that big of a deal.
We went over it. The resume is impressive. WHL Rookie of the Year as a 16-year-old, WHL champion, playoff MVP, and scoring leader as a 17-year-old. Which of those honors is most important?
I can't really take credit for both of those. You know, I was lucky enough to come in here in the Wheat Kings organization and play with some unbelievable players. You know, when I was 16 there, I got the chance to play with Morgan Klimchuk, and he kind of took me under his wing there, and he was great for me, and he showed me a lot. And then I found chemistry with Jace Howerluck and Tyler Coulter last season, and you know we kind of played together the whole year. So they were both huge for me. So I give a lot of credit to my line mates.
On the first day of last year's World Juniors, you tweeted, "Do cool things" to all your teammates at the event. Are you hoping to do cool things yourself at this year's Juniors?
Yeah, for sure. That's obviously one of my goals for the season. But like I said before, you know, my main focus right now is just getting healthy and getting back into shape, and you know, start winning some games with my team here.
Well, we mentioned it off the top. Pat Falloon is the highest drafted Manitoban ever, second overall in 1991. What would it mean to you to be the first ever Manitoban to go first overall in the draft?
Yeah, obviously that would be something special, but like I said before, that's a long ways away. There's a lot of hockey to be played, and you know, I'm just trying to get back in the lineup here. So.
Well, listen, have a great season. We wish you the best.
All right, thanks.
We need to work on his cockiness and trash talking. He's too soft-spoken and modest. No, that's the way we grow them in Canada. Let's get to the rest of your top 10.
Yeah, an interesting group from 6 to 10. And let's start with number 6, and that would be Gabe Vilardi. The Windsor Spitfire center is a slick and skilled offensive pivot. He's got high-end hockey sense. He can finish. He can make plays. He can do it all. Vilardi was the best player at Canada's Ivan Hlinka Tournament selection camp in the summer, and by a wide margin. But he suffered a knee injury there, and he was not able to play in the tournament, and he's just now recovering from that. Hopes to be back in the Windsor Spitfire lineup pretty soon. He's not a high-end skater, but it's not a weakness either, and his skill and smarts are noteworthy. Number 7, Christian Vesalainen, another in the recent long line of top Finnish draft prospects. Some scouts describe Vesalainen as a poor man's Jesse Puljujärvi, which is to suggest he's not quite the elite skater and skill and power of Edmonton's 4th overall pick last season, but he's a rangy, hard-driving winger with size who is not without some offensive upside. Number 8, Owen Tippett. Mississauga steelhead winger, has NHL speed and an NHL shot, but according to scouts, he's the kind of player that needs to put the puck in the net to be effective. His overall game and consistency isn't as well developed yet. He's a cousin of Tampa prospect Mitchell Stevens, and his 15 goals and 5 assists last year with Mississauga reinforces his rep as a shoot-first winger. Number 9, Cal Foote. Yes, he is the son of former NHLer Adam Foote, and he's yet another in the long line out of that Kelowna Rocket defenseman factory. Now, Foote isn't quite as naturally mean and aggressive as his dad was, but he's a big, rangy blue liner who plays a strong two-way offensive and defensive game, and he can also take care of himself. Foote will represent Canada internationally, but played a lot of his minor hockey in Colorado. He needs to continue to work on his skating, but still projects out as a top 4 NHL defenseman. And number 10, Elias Andersson. The Swedish center's a late 1998 birth date, and while he's a sub-6-foot center, he plays a very hard and complete 200-foot game. He excelled against older competition at the Under-20 World Junior Preview Showcase in Plymouth, and he's not without some offensive ability, but the question that will be asked of him is how much elite offensive upside does he have to be a potential top 10 guy?
All right, let's review Bob's 6 to 10 in his rankings. Vilardi, the second overall pick in the 2015 OHL Draft. Bob talked about that knee injury. He has been cleared for a return to the ice. So we're talking about fathers and sons. Tippett is not the son of Dave Tippett. He was named to the OHL All-Rookie First Team last season. And Foote, who is the son of Adam, 6'3", rookie, finished second in 2016-17 scoring by Kelowna defensemen. All right, let's run through 11 through 15. Casey Middlestad out of Green Bay is at number 11. The American named U.S. High School Hockey Player of the Year by USA Today in 15-16. Martin Nakash, captain of the Czech Republic's 2016 Hlinka team, 2 points in 5 games in the top Czech league so far this season. Michael Rasmussen scored 8 of 18 goals last season on the power play. Nick Hague out of Mississauga, 6'5" defenseman, named OHL Scholastic Player of the Year in 15-16. And Ryan Paling from St. Cloud graduated a year early from high school so he can play with older twin brothers at St. Cloud State. By the way, O season opener on Wednesday, the Q Thursday, the dub on Friday. So how would you describe the top of this draft class as a whole?
Well, some of the scouts said it's not as good a year to be bad in the National Hockey League as it has been. And everybody knows the impact that Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel, and the anticipated impact that Austin Matthews will make. And no one's saying that Nolan Patrick's not a very good prospect, but this entire draft seems like it's down a notch from the last couple of that. And there's a lot more uncertainty, too. Even from 2 to 10, I think there's going to be a lot more of jockeying for positions. And we always see it, but I think that's going to be even exacerbated this year, the fact that there isn't as much consensus outside of number one. Not a very good year for defensemen. Only 2 in the top 10, 3 in our top 15. Excellent year for goaltenders. Now, we don't have any in our top 15 here, but boy, oh boy, American Jake Ottinger is one of a whole bunch of what Craig Button would describe as the United Nations of goaltending this year. There's Russians, there's Swedes, there's Finns, and this year, some real good Canadians in the draft in the goaltending position as well.
This is our 2017 preseason draft ranking show, but we always spend a second looking ahead to beyond that, 2018. There have now been 5 players who've been granted exceptional status into junior hockey in Canada. The first 3 were no-brainers and have become superstars in Tavares, Ekblad, and McDavid. Sean Day went a little bit further down. We'll see what he develops into as a National Hockey League player. And all those guys in the O. Last year, Joe Veleno of St. John, the first underager in the Quebec League, he'll be eligible in the 2018 draft. Once again with our scout, Craig Button. So has Veleno lived up to his exceptional player status so far?
Absolutely, he has. Last year going into St. John, it was a real ideal situation for him. He wasn't in a situation like Tavares, Ekblad, and McDavid where they were the worst teams. It was a good team. But after Christmas, he was a really good, solid player. And he played in the Ivan Halinka tournament as an underage player and was one of Canada's very best players. So certainly acquitted himself very well.
So if you were to do your super, mega, crazy early rankings for 2018, would he be at the top?
He would be. He'd be number 1.
Okay, so who else is right there with him?
Well, there's going to be other players, but 2 players that have really caught my eye are defenseman Rasmus Dahlin from Frölunda, the Swedish Hockey League. He's 16 years old, but he already plays like he's 19. A great maturity in his game, skilled offensively, defensively, and incredible smarts. And then another player, the son of former NHLer Andrew McBain, Jack McBain. He was drafted by Barry late in the first round of the OHL draft. He's going to play with the Toronto Junior Canadiens in the OJHL, but he's got a motor. Every single shift he's on the ice, he wants to make things happen. He can create offense. His skating has to improve. He's an all-round athlete, James. Plays lacrosse, beach volleyball, skis. And if he can continue to develop as he has in the past year or so, he could be a real dynamite player, maybe in the mold of a Trevor Linden.
What about the 2022 draft? What 11, 12-year-olds are you? No, I'm just kidding. We're going to move on in the show. As Craig gives us a preview of 2018, we'll focus back on 2017 as we continue. A disappointing 2016 for Canada.
Canada's gold medal dreams are over. Their tournament is finished.
We'll see where Canada is headed as we move closer to this year's World Juniors.
There's Liner, the shot, score! And Finland's back on top, 6-5. Canada's gold medal dreams are over. Their tournament is finished.
They score! Another goal for the USA. Loose power play goal. 9-1 USA. Tough afternoon for this young Canadian side. Scores! And there's your exclamation mark for the United States. 10-3 USA.
Cape Breton, Screaming Eagles, Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Penticton Bees, Tyson Joseph.
First time ever, there have been more Americans than Canadians. Do we make anything of that?
This could be a blip on the map. All of the governing bodies in Canada have some concern.
3 goals in 3 games is simply not going to cut it.
Well, that was depressing for Canadian junior hockey fans. It was a brutal year, and we're not accustomed to that, the way this program has been so dominant. 6th in the World Junior. Worst since 1998. Lost 10-3 in that U18 bronze game you saw the highlights from. Only 2 top 10 picks in the draft. The 2-year total was 5. Previous 2-year low was 8. And just 3 goals in 3 losses in that showcase event, 5th in the Ivan Halinka. It was just a nightmare all around for Canada's World Junior program. So Darren Dreger was saying back at the draft it was a blip. Was it a blip, or is there real reason for Hockey Canada to be concerned?
I think there's real reason for them to be concerned. And I think they run the risk of being in a similar situation as where Sweden was in the early 2000s. A lot of structure, not enough creativity. We're watching the North American team play at the World Cup of Hockey, and they're exciting, and they're fast, and they're creative. That seems to be something that, and we're not just talking at the junior level, I'm seeing it at levels below that, where creativity and an emphasis on structure is becoming weighted too much to that end, and I think that can be real problematic going forward.
I think Hockey Canada should be concerned, but I don't think they should necessarily be panicked either. You know, that was a head-scratcher in that showcase in August. When you've got players that are skilled, and you talk about creativity, you're not going to find many more players creative than Mitch Marner, Dylan Strome, and some of the core guys that were on that team that did so poorly at the World Juniors last year, and then didn't get the job done at the summer camp, keeping in mind it is a summer camp. One of the problems they think they have is that maybe Team Canada's defense at every level, under 18, under 20, there's good defensemen. I mean, Jacob Chychrun, Jake Bean, Thomas Chabot, those guys are good defensemen. They can skate, they can move a puck, but they didn't do a good job of moving the puck in the August camp and couldn't get the puck to those skilled forwards as much. And that was a problem with the Hlinka team at the under 18. They identified that the overall defense, that we haven't been developing as many impact defensemen since Aaron Ekblad's draft. But you've got to be careful too. I mean, the cycle runs differently, and I think there is cause for development concern. But remember 2014-15, we won the Olympics, had the draft with Aaron Ekblad, first overall, and 4 of the top 5 were Canadian. They won the Hlinka that year. They won the World Junior with Connor McDavid's year, the Connor McDavid draft, the World Championships. So you had a year that was incredible in 2014-15, and I'm not saying you should ignore what's happened in the last year, but it tends to run in cycles.
Well, it's strange to watch because you're watching at the World Cup, Canada at the peak, dominating everybody, and so much great talent on this North American team, and at the same time, this disastrous year for the next generation to come. Handicap Canada's chances of somehow getting back on top and winning gold at the World Juniors.
Well, from my vantage point now for the World Junior Tournament, I see the USA as a clear favorite. I think they can beat you any way. They can beat you in a skill game, a power game. Their goaltending's good. Their defense is excellent. And after that, I think Sweden is the next greatest challenge for the gold medal. Canada's going to need a lot of things to go right their way to be able to beat those two teams.
I suppose the one thing, Canada usually plays really well at home. Again, the crowds in Toronto and Montreal as the tournament returns there. Remember, it's a little bit different this year where Canada will be playing the preliminary group games in Toronto, and then the medal round happens in Montreal this year as Canada tries to get back on top and win gold at the World Juniors. Remember, they did win last time. It was in Montreal and Toronto just 2 years ago. Lots more shows coming up as we get set for the season. The annual top 50 players in the NHL. Mid-season last year, remember Crosby dropped way down. I have a feeling he might be right back up the way he's been playing in the playoffs last year and in this World Cup. Fantasy Draft, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and our season preview also on Tuesday, October 11th, right after that at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Well, we'll follow the draftees all year long. The mid-season special is set for January 30th, and then Bob's final draft order. He's usually in the high 90% on his accuracy, so book it.